Bethesda resident Cokie Roberts has spent her entire life surrounded by politics. The youngest child of U.S. Representatives Hale and Lindy Boggs, she currently lives in the home she grew up in on Bradley Boulevard. She was a young mother living in California when her father's plane disappeared in Alaska. And after that search was called off, she told us there was no question her mother would run for his seat. She went on to win and served 9 terms representing the state of Louisiana. In this month's FaceTime interview, we catch up with Cokie Roberts at her Bethesda home, where we talked about politics, Montgomery County, and how she started her career as a journalist.
I got into journalism totally by accident. My first job out of college was here in Washington, working at WRC-TV. Then they had a show on the air for a long time called Teen Talk, and the station decided to take it off and put on another public affairs program, and it was called Meeting of the Minds, and I was the anchor. But then Steve and I got married, and I moved to New York, and it never occurred to either one of us that I would not just quit my job and move. And so that was 1966. That's us.
She and her husband Steve eventually moved back to the D.C. area, where she began working for several big-name media outlets.
When we moved back here in 1977, I started working at NPR. And so I've been at NPR ever since. And then starting in 1980, had jobs for PBS. And then I went to ABC in '88.
Cokie Roberts grew up in a political home, and she will tell you that shaped her into the journalist she is today. Her late sister Barbara Boggs Sigmund served as the mayor of Princeton in the 1980s, and her late brother Thomas Boggs was a powerful Washington attorney. She says politics was the primary language the family spoke.
Because of my upbringing, I not only learned a great deal about our government, but I also learned a great deal about history, because my family was always very engaged in the history of the nation. And that gives a lot of context to what I do. I know a lot. I know a lot about American government and how it works. I had the advantage of having an education in American government my whole life. So I do have a bias in favor of the institutions of government. I do think that Congress and the presidency and the courts were a good establishment.
Roberts was an outspoken critic of President-elect Donald Trump during the campaign.
Obviously, you grew up in politics around your mom and dad. Have you ever seen anything like this where you have
But she says she respects the office of the presidency and will wait until his administration gets in office before making any commentary.
Well, we'll have to see what direction we're going. We have a new president, unlike any president we've ever had before. We've never elected someone who did not have either public service or military experience. I remember election night sitting in the studio as it was clear that Donald Trump was going to be elected president, and one of my colleagues saying, you know, these are uncharted waters. But my response was, well, the voters hated the charted waters. I have tremendous faith in the system, and I have a deep respect for the office of the presidency. And I think what you have to do, as President Obama said, is give President-elect Trump the benefit of the doubt and see where he goes with it.
Now that the campaign is over, Roberts, who has authored more than 20 books, is on the road promoting her new children's book, Ladies of Liberty.
Of course, it's Sacagawea with her baby on her back.
She has condensed her adult book about the women who laid the groundwork for a better society.
This is our last First Lady who was born outside of the United States, the only other one. Louisa Catherine Adams. The Founding Mothers, which came out a few years ago, I'm happy to say all of these books have hit the bestseller list, and I'm particularly glad that that's true about the children's books, because I want boys and girls to know about these remarkable women in our history. She called Lady Bird Johnson, who was one of her closest friends, and one of this group of remarkable women.
It's nonstop for you. No plans of slowing down.
There's no point in slowing down. You know, if I get to the point where I'm slow, I'll slow down. But at the moment, I'm not slow.
Let's talk about Montgomery County. You've lived in this house for quite some time. This is your parents' house. Why is this a place that you've chosen to call home?
Montgomery County is a really special place, and it's so wonderfully diverse now. You know, the fact is, when I was growing up here, it was basically a white bread suburb of Washington. Now it is, as you well know, the schools are majority minority, and still wonderful, wonderful schools, which tells you that this can be done, that this is not something that is a result of having minorities in schools. It's a result of not paying attention. And the Montgomery County schools have paid attention. And it is a beautiful place to live. It's got wonderful services, and it's a terrific place to raise a family.